Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Amit Ranjan. So, I am a full stack developer. So, working with one of the MNCs in Hyderabad. So, recently I have got an opportunity to have an interview with Oracle. So, I have attended it and I'm trying to share my experience with Oracle. So, just to give an heads up, this is my round 2. So there is one more video prior to this in which I have covered the interview questions that were asked me as part of round 1. So basically in this video the topics that I am covering is Spring Boot and DB queries. So there is just a note I have mentioned for the first time watchers that this is my second round interview. So without wasting much of my time, let me start the interview questions that were asked in the interview. So the spring interview questions that were asked are: describe the spring bean life cycle. So there is a list of things that happens when a bean is getting instantiated. So please go through that. So the other question is like, what is dependency injections and what are the types of dependency injection? This was the second question. The third question was like, what are the different types of scopes spring supports and what is the default scope of a bean? So I hope everybody must be aware of this, like what are the different types of scopes spring is providing, and by default what is the scope of the bean by default. If I am not wrong, that would be short singleton. So the next question is like, which steps of the spring bean life cycle can be overridden? So there are, up to my knowledge, there are two methods that can be overridden. One is pre-destroy and post initialization. So the other question is like, what is spring bean factory? What are some of the implementations available? So there are a couple of implementations available for getting the spring bean factory, so please have a look on that. The other question is like, in the context of spring, what is the stereotype? What are the existing stereotypes and what are the difference between them? So basically at that moment I couldn't recollect like what is stereotype itself. Also I have smoothly rejected saying like I am not aware of what is stereotype in spring. Maybe in if you are if then I asked interview like, if you can reframe the question in some other way, maybe I can able to answer it. But he said like it's okay, not a problem. Like everybody, it's not a rule that everybody should know everything. So that's a good part from him. Like the other question is like, how do you load and inject properties into a spring bean? So there is an annotation with which we can do this, like iterate value, and there are a couple of other ways also, like property readers are there, resource readers are there, through which we can inject the properties into the bean. So the other question was like, which dependency injection method is better, constructor based or setter based? So I would suggest it would be, I would always go with the constructor, because it makes it a mandatory thing to pass the value whenever we are using a constructor based injection. So there are the chances of missing a bean dependency is less. So one of the reason, maybe that is up to my knowledge completely, I would always prefer constructor based. So the next question is like, what are the different types of spring bean auto wiring? So if we am not wrong, there are three ways, like by name, by type, and there is one more default. So sorry, by name and by type, there are two ways through which auto wiring can be happened. So there was a question like, what kinds of transaction management support does spring offer? So please brush your knowledge on this also, like transaction management, how the transaction management works in spring. So because there was a lot of discussion on this happened between me and the interviewer, like there was a healthy kind of discussion that happened between me and the interviewer. So these were the questions that were asked as part of the core spring. Then the next section I would cover spring boot interview questions that were asked to me. So basically the obvious first question of the spring boot is like, why spring boot and what are the advantages that it is providing apart from the spring? Like there is already spring in that is existing. Like apart from this, what are the advantages that spring boot spring boot applications are providing? So there are n number of advantages that spring boot is providing. So I have answered those things. So if you have worked on the Spring Boot, you will definitely know like what are the advantages it is providing. And like basically to um, to build a production ready application, it is helping a developers a lot. Like lot of boiler code is getting eradicated now. Just having few dependencies, right dependencies, and that's it. In a single go we can have a production ready code. So the next question like is like what is the latest version of Spring Boot and its system requirement. So if I'm not wrong, this latest version is 2 point something. Currently like it is built upon Java 1.8 plus version it requires. So I was just aware of these two things because in my current project we are using Spring around 1.9 something. So I am able to answer this question. The other question was is like what is the use of it that enable auto configuration or annotation. So please go through it. So the next question is like what is Spring Boot starter, and the next question after that was like after giving him the solution, like the next question he asked is like what is the use of it that Spring Boot application annotation. So this is the core of annotation of Spring Boot, like which to basically we can say that this is the starting point of the application. Like whenever you want to start we can have that class generated with that Spring Boot application. So then the other question was like what is Spring Dev tool dependencies. Oh, I have copy pasted like sorry, created the question twice. Like basically if you want to know about dev tool dependency, if it is available from Spring Boot 1.5 onwards. Like earlier to that we need to for every chain we need to restart our server manually. So by having this dependency it is detecting the change. If at all we are changing something, so on the go on the fly it is restarting the server without any manual efforts. So that is the benefit of Spring Boot dev tools. So the other question like what do you mean by like optionated in Spring Boot. So basically uh, if you are aware of it, please answer it now or else you can refer it on the Google. So the other question was like what does Spring security mean. So I haven't much worked much on this, but I was able to give him some answer that I have gone through the Google. So I would suggest you to please refer some good site to get the answer. The other question is like what is auto configuration in Spring Boot and what is an embedded container. So basically embedded container Spring Boot is providing two right now if I am not wrong. One is Tomcat and one is Jetty server containers. So what is it is useful in much. It comes a handy way to a developer because no need to have a separate containers to deploy our code and to run that things like it is having. So it's having it can be considered as one of the advantages also. Like then the next question is what embedded container does Spring Boot support. I have already informed like so like one is Tomcat and other is Jetty. So the other question like is like how to reload my changes on Spring Boot without having to restart the server. I have already said that uh, they like using dev tools we can have this, or there is one more dependency called like reload using which we can do that also. This reload thing was informed to me by the interviewer itself. Like I was aware of the dev tools thing, but I was not aware of the reload dependency. So the other question like was like how to implement Spring Web using Spring Boot. So if you are having in at that enable MVC or in sorry at that enable web annotation, we can um, create a web application using Spring Boot. So these were the questions that were asked me as part of the Spring Boot. So the next section I would be covering the questions related to the DB like databases. So the first question the interviewer asked me is like, so do I have a working knowledge on DB things, can I write a queries and all those things. So I have given him like he asked me to rate myself out of 5, so I have given him like 2.5. To be frank, I haven't much worked much on the writing of DB scripts, so I have to give him 2.5. So the questions were like this. Like first, what is the difference between delete and the truncate statement, because both will delete, but one can be rolled back and another cannot be rolled back. So then he asked me what are the joins I know in. So I have given him a list of joins that I know and after that he has asked me to explain each and every join and in which scenarios I would be using like preferring which join. Then the as I've already covered, list the different types of joins. So I have explained him in detail like what all joints I know, and given him the brief description about each and every join. So the next thing is like he was asking me to write a query to find the second highest salary of an employee, so for which I have used few predefined method that is Oracle providing, so I was able to write it. Then the next question was like to find the duplicate rows in a table, for which it took some time for me to write, but I was able to write that query. Actually interviewer helped me in this. So the other question like was like display the first five records of employee table, so I have used this ronum. Using with the help of ronum I was able to create this. Then he asked me to display the nth record from the employee table. So I was not that much sure that that query worked, but interviewer didn't say anything on commented anything on that query thing. So these were the questions that were asked me as part of round 2. So one more thing I would like to mention is like if you think this video has helped you, please share this video to other groups so that it may be helpful to someone who is looking out for the interview process at Oracle, like how what kind of questions we can expect from them, or like what is the process that Oracle follows to recruit the employees. So I hope this helped someone, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.